70, the destruction of Jerusalem and the end of the Jewish age. Did you know that the early church believed that the destruction of Jerusalem was a dramatic sign, an unmistakable public display striking the end of the Jewish age? They did not believe that there were two groups or two faiths, that is, Jews and Christians, because they themselves were Jews who had received Christ. And they perceived that they were of the Jewish faith, and the messianic prophecies of the Old Testament had reached their fulfillment. They did not regard themselves as converts to a new religion, but they stayed devoted to the faith of the patriarchs. They saw themselves as righteous Jews who had received their Messiah, and thus they remained in covenant with him. While those Jews who rejected Jesus were regarded as disobedient Jews, hard-hearted Jews who had fallen out of covenant with God. But the Lord protected those who received him, and we see that Jesus prepared his children for what was to come. It was in Matthew 24 that Jesus prophesied of the destruction of Jerusalem, warning his followers to flee to the mountains. During an impending time of great trouble, he warned in Matthew 24:15-16, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes." Jesus' every word would come to fruition roughly 70 years later. And what is remarkable is that the first century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus documents several strange supernatural events that occurred during the siege of Jerusalem that confirmed the end of an era, while hearkening to an altogether new era that had begun with Christ. The destruction of Jerusalem was a terrible sign for those who had rejected Jesus. It was a bloody affair of epic proportion, leaving fumes of death and utter annihilation in its wake. Josephus wrote that 1.1 million people, the majority of them Jewish, were killed during the siege. The only group protected from this tragedy were the Jewish Christians, who heeded the prophetic warning from the Lord and fled to the mountains. Their continued faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would see them through this devastating event. So the concept of the Christian faith being separate from the Jewish faith was not taught in churches until the 1800s. Close to 2,000 years after Christ's resurrection, it was an entirely new teaching stemming from the likes of preachers such as John Nelson Darby and Cyrus Scofield, who introduced the theory of dispensation. But it is always of great value and insight to study the teachings and beliefs of the early church before corruption and deviation set in. Tom and I will be exploring this fascinating topic in our next Cardboard Box Church Zoom meeting. To join us, please email eventscardboardboxchurch@gmail.com to receive your invitation. Love you. God bless. And I'll see you soon.